right, hello and welcome to another expert interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM. And today I am delighted to be joined by John Livesay, the Pitch Whisperer.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. And given that your name is the Pitch Whisperer, I thought we'd talk about pitching.
That sounds like a plan to me. There's three unspoken questions people have when they hear you pitch anything, whether it's pitching to get a job, if you have your own company, you're pitching to get people to join your team, or if you're in sales, of course, you're pitching to get a client. Mm-hmm. So talk about what those three unspoken questions are. I give some value right up at the top.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start. Explain what those are, because I think, let's baseline this a little bit, because
Sure.
Pitching has in some ways gotten a bad name. Like people say, "Oh, don't be too pitchy and don't be pitching." So in your mind, what is the essence of pitching? What does it really mean?
Well, a lot of it has to do with selling. Selling has an equally bad rap, right? Selling, pitching. The whole differentiation, John, is people think of it in terms of pushing your message out, right? Being pushy. And the same thing is true with advertising, right? That's pushing your message out, whether it's an ad on a commercial or an ad in a magazine, interrupting your experience. The whole secret to pitching where you're not pushing is to become a storyteller, right? Because stories pull people in as opposed to pushing your message out.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, because I think people associate pitching with like carnival barkers and things like that. Right. So on that idea of storytelling, right? Why is storytelling so powerful?
Well, partly because it's in our DNA. In the caveman days, we used to sit around the campfire telling stories to each other, and now we sit around the glow of PowerPoints. So it's really about how our brain works, John. Mm-hmm. The left side of our brain is, numbers, and we get very analytical. And when you start talking about, here's why you should buy this, you're analyzing, right? But if you start telling a story to someone, they relax. And in the right side of our brain, where imagination and storytelling and emotional engagement happen, people sit back and go, oh, maybe I'm going to be entertained or inspired or something. And you just process the information differently because we buy emotionally and then back it up with logic. Right. So storytelling is the emotional hook.
Excellent. So tell me about these three basic rules of pitching.
Well, they're unspoken questions that people have when they listen to you pitch. And you will never have anybody come out and ask you these questions. But if you're telling a good story, you're going to answer them. The first one people have when they first connect with you is, do I trust you? Which is a gut thing. In fact, the handshake came about just to show we didn't have a weapon, right? It was a fight or flight response. So if you're in sales and you're trying to get people to trust you, credibility, not exaggerating, eye contact, all of those things are very important. Yeah. The next is we move from the gut to the heart, which is, do I like you? Mm-hmm. And the best way to increase your likability is increasing your empathy. Literally putting yourself in the other person's shoes and having language that shows that you see things from their perspective. And then finally, it moves from the gut to the heart to the head. And the question people have is, will this work for me? Mm-hmm. That's really where the story comes in. Because if you can tell a story of someone else you've helped or someone else who bought your product or service, and they see themselves in that story, then you're answering that question, will that work for me?
Yeah. No, I love that. But let's start with the first one, trust, because I always find that's an interesting one, because trust is it's quite a difficult thing to establish, right? And, probably nowadays we're probably more cynical than we've ever been. And so how do you, as a salesperson, in a short period of time, start to lay the foundations for trust?
Well, I think warm referrals are a great way. Mm-hmm. Get trust, right? If someone else that they trust has introduced you, or you have a reference that they know, that's so important and sometimes so overlooked, right? And just some basic things of being comfortable in your own skin. Mm-hmm. People feel that, right? If you trust yourself to come from integrity, then other people are going to trust you because you're not trying to push and you're not the carnival barker, right? Right. You're relaxed. So it's much like dating. How do you trust somebody? How do you get another date? All that stuff. You can't come across desperate or needy. That's simple.
Yeah, no, I love that analogy. Yeah, that's true. Desperate and needy. So, and then move into the empathy part, right? So, empathy again. I mean, no, a lot of times I still find that people confuse empathy and sympathy and don't really understand what empathy really is.
Yeah.
But it's also something that, let's face it, you can't really fake empathy, can you? I mean, you can try, but I mean, empathy has to come from, a real sense of feeling and putting yourself in the position of that other person. So how can people who maybe are not naturally empathetic, how do they develop those skills?
Well, I talk about in terms of visualizing an empathy hat that you put on, so that it's a conscious decision to start seeing something through somebody else's eyes. So let's have a little story because I'm a storyteller,
Yeah.
right? The difference between empathy and sympathy. So one of the clients I coach, Gensler, is a big architecture design firm. And I told them that when they go to pitch with the other firms they're competing against, the pitch starts the minute they leave their home. Their mindset, what they get into the building, being nice and consistent to everyone, including the receptionist. So when you walk into the receptionist, she's got two other people ahead of you. The phones are ringing and the FedEx guy's there and you, right? You've sort of got three ways to handle that. The rude, pushy salesperson, hey, I got a 2 o'clock appointment. Right? That gets you nowhere. The other is, I'm sorry to bother you, but when I have an appointment, right? That's a little sympathy maybe. That doesn't do anything for your likability, right? It's better than rude. But the empathy is, wow, you must feel like an air traffic controller today with all these things going on. Whenever you have a second, let me know. How different that is?
Yeah.
So then the Gensler team goes in, and I have helped them with their storytelling, why people should engage with them, and they see themselves in the story. They had a great call. They're leaving. The client walks them out to the elevator. They get in the elevator. The client turns to the receptionist and goes, "What'd you think of him?" They like those Gensler people. She won't even know why, but they got me.
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel the same way about them when they were in here pitching. So it's all a cultural fit.
Yeah, no, I love that, and the crazy thing about your example or whatever is that things like those that can really differentiate you should be what's happening anyway, right? But we're in a culture today where everybody perceives themselves to be so busy, everything is fast moving, everybody's impatient, they've been bombarded with this notion that everything should be instant, and I think people have lost that empathy for other people, right? Because they're so consumed in their own busyness, right?
Exactly. And especially if you're about to go have a lot on the line with a big sales, that's not the time to turn your empathy hat off.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you talk about the head part, like why will this work for me? Here's something that I think is often overlooked, right? And I know you'll agree, is that in a consumer purchase, right? If I go out today and I buy the latest super duper TV, I don't even know what they are. I've lost track of what these things do anymore. That's different. And I blow $5,000 on it and I come home, right? What's the worst that can really happen to me? I spent money and maybe I shouldn't have. My wife hits me over the head with the TV because she would have liked the money to go somewhere else. But there's not that much consequence involved, right? B2B, right? When I'm in a company making a purchasing decision, there's a lot of consequences, right? If it works, I can be a hero, and if it doesn't work, I can be the opposite. So I think people often lose that sense of there's a lot riding on it.
Well, part of it's tied into empathy as well, right? And when I used to sell advertising for Condé Nast, and I would call on ad agencies of big brands, like I would call on the Lexus advertising agency, I would literally say to them, my job is to make you look good to your client. And we have collaborative conversations when I would pitch ideas of why they should advertise this new model in my magazine. Then it was a whole different conversation because they knew I had their back.
Right. Yeah, but I think that thing about making sure that it works for them. So when it gets into that whole logical piece, what do you do there? How do you persuade somebody or to demonstrate to somebody that it's actually going to work for them?
Well, again, it's the storytelling and not the logic.
Right.
Because people remember your stories, not your numbers. So what I would say is, let's go to the car example again,
Hmm.
right? Um, you know, another car company had a very similar challenge to what you had, and that this was a
Right.
car they're not known for. And what they found is when we created this event for them, it not only got them a lot of publicity, but actually they could track actual sales from
Hmm.
doing this ad combo with events, right? And so we've taken that same proven system and created a customized idea and event for you that has nothing to do with your competitor, but we know this system and this formula works, but this is customized for you. And then they're like, got it.
Hmm. So these are all skills that can often and obviously be learned and practiced. So, how much of this boils down to getting say a sales manager to really work with his salespeople to adopt this approach?
Well, it starts with everybody. Even if your sales manager's not doing it and you decide you realize the value of storytelling and you
Mm-hmm.
can learn how to become a storyteller yourself and then try to bring that culture into your company. And it's all about results in sales, right? So if you show
Sure.
that you're closing more sales, getting people to engage with you more, and then it's not this crickets conversation you present and no one gives you any feedback,
Right.
then you can then get your sales managers to learn how to do it. And, again, back to the Gensler example, they're great with their presentations and their beautiful slides and they have great design, but they weren't telling stories of why they're so passionate about this client or why they're so passionate about architecture or describing stories of other people they helped.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to show before and after pictures, but unless there's a story to go with it, people are not pulled in.
Absolutely. So how do you, okay, so say you get people and they, they adopt the idea of storytelling and, they start, how do you then make sure that they don't go too far and take storytelling too far and start to maybe, ramble, let's say, or go off
Ah,
lose
right.
the plot a little bit?
Well, John, I see that problem a lot with
Mhm.
rapport building. Either people skip it or they spend 20 minutes of 30 minutes all on it, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is true when you really learn, and that's what I love doing, is helping everybody learn how to become a great storyteller. You learn there's a structure to a good story and that you are almost like a co-pilot with your buyer,
Mhm.
right? You have a flight plan in place and you know in this particular story where it's going, what the point is, and more importantly, what it means to the person you're telling a story to.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. So it's important that people learn that there is, as you say, there's a structure to this, and it's not just like stream of consciousness, right?
So it's thought out and practiced just like everything else, but then it sounds conversational,
Right.
just like a good elevator pitch does.
Hmm. Yeah, and I like your point about the rapport thing. I mean, I do see that a lot myself, is where people start, a whole lot of conversation around, oh, and where are you sitting today, and oh yeah, I love that city, and blah blah blah, and there comes a point where you're just going, okay, can we move on now?
Exactly. Right.
So what other tips would you have for people around pitching? What are some other nuggets of advice you'd have?
Well, everybody needs a good elevator pitch.
Hmm.
Few people have one. And so I think the key is really figure out who you help and what problem you solve. So, for example, when people come up to me at events, parties, whatever, they'll say, what do you do? And I'll say, everybody needs a good elevator pitch, and few people have one. I'm the pitch whisperer, and I help people go from invisible to irresistible.
Oh,
And when that happens, they get new clients. And people go, well, that's interesting. Tell me more. And
right.
that's the goal of a good elevator pitch.
Hmm.
What's a pitch whisperer? How do you get people to do this? And then it's not a 10-minute invitation to give a monologue when someone says, what do you do?
Yeah, and I like the fact that you've made it so it's interesting, it's entertaining, it's intriguing, because let's face it, most elevator pitches they're like the elevator music. Really, it's just they're dull and boring and forgettable.
Exactly, right. And so, people don't remember my name or my podcast or my book or anything. Most people will remember the pitch whisperer, and I've done enough branding around that. If you Google the pitch whisperer,
Mm.
my name and podcast and book all come up
Yeah.
around that. The book is The Successful Pitch, and the podcast is the same name, but people can remember pitch whisperer because your brain goes, it's not a horse whisperer, it's a pitch whisperer, and it's just enough that our brain is, you put two things together that normally don't go together, that's what makes it intriguing.
Excellent. Yeah, we got horse whisperer, dog whisperer, and we've got the pitch whisperer, right? You know, you need to get your own. You need to get your own cable show.
I'm up for that. Let's do it.
Well, listen, we're bumping up against the end of the time, but I wanted to give you a couple of moments to tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself, how they can find you, contact you, and how you can help them.
Sure. I have a free gift for everybody who's listening.
Ooh.
If you text the word pitch with a P, not a B, to 66866, I will email you a free PDF of the 3 mistakes to avoid when you pitch anything. Oh. And my website is John Livesay, Liv as in Victor, ESAY.com. The Pitch Whisperer, you can buy my book on Amazon. The podcast is free. And I'm passionate about giving keynote talks to companies who need some sales speakers to come in and give people new skills to become irresistible.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Listen, I really enjoyed this chat, and I'm sure we could chat for more, and we will again soon, I'm sure. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeline is CRM. And again, thank you, John, the Pitch Whisperer, for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, John.